The film commences with the arrival of a white truck at the Silogen Research Center, situated 15 miles outside Prairie, Idaho. Within the laboratory, a dome houses a population of insects thriving around the cornfield. The dome and its inhabitants serve the purpose of conducting a test on a genetically modified strain of locusts developed by researchers Gary Wolf and Russ Snow. These locusts are engineered to consume crop-damaging insects without causing harm to the plants, with the intention of eventually selling them to farmers upon successful experimentation. In the subsequent scene, the locusts are released into the dome for a brief period before being guided back to their holding pen using a potent pheromone. Subsequently, the researchers examine the cornfield and ascertain that all pests have been eradicated, with no damage inflicted upon the plants. The positive results elate the team, leading to a celebratory atmosphere as they believe their experiment has achieved success. However, their happiness is short-lived when they notice that the holding pen is empty. Upon inspection, they realize that one of the vents has been jammed midway through the closing process and that it needs to be closed manually. Seeing this, Gary immediately sends one of the Silogen workers into the tunnel system in order to close it before the locusts escape out. As the worker gets there, he finds that the vent is stuck in an open position. Before he can communicate the problem to the team, a swarm of locusts flies towards him and pierces through his body, killing him on the spot. They then escape from the Silogen research facility through the open vent. The scene then cuts to a cornfield near Prairie, owned by a farmer named Hank Odom and his wife Agatha. Hank orders his son, Mike, to go get some corn from field number 7, and the latter rides off on his dirt bike. Just then, Hank and Agatha are visited by Colt Dunton, an owner of a small organic pesticide company, in order to collect payment for the last pesticide spray. Hank complains about the price of the chemicals, but he still pays for it. Following this, Colt drives home to his girlfriend, Vicky, with whom he shares the good news that their organic pesticide formula is working successfully. Back at the Silogen Research Center, Russ and some workers investigate the vent, only to come across the mutilated body for their friend. Russ immediately heads back to Gary and reports the incident to him. He further intends to alert the authorities, but Gary asserts that since their locusts have short lives and do not breed, they shouldn't worry too much. Russ tries to point out the potential danger, but Gary downplays the severity of the situation, prioritizing profit over safety. In the meantime, Hank is in the midst of harvesting corn when his combine harvester's blade unexpectedly malfunctions. He gets out to check and discovers the corpse of a bull that has been almost completely eaten to the bones. Alarmed, he radios his wife and informs her about the same. Just then, Agatha hears something in the cornfield and proceeds to inspect. Much to her dismay, she finds Mike's bike and the partially eaten body of her son. Hearing her panicked voice, Hank proceeds to get back to his vehicle, but finds it totally covered in locusts. Frightened, he tries to run away, but he's attacked and killed by the locust swarm. Not long after, the locusts reach Agatha, causing her to end up in the same fate. A short while later, Colt arrives at the scene to find the area deserted. He wanders around the cornfield where he finds a dead locust. As he walks further, he discovers the mutilated body of Hank, which prompts him to run away in fear. He then heads to a medical hospital where his girlfriend works as a veterinarian. He shares the grim news and thinks the locust killed him. It turns out that Vicky also has received several reports about the mutilated body of a cow. Following this, the couple inspects one of the specimens and discovers a dead locust inside the cow's body. In their knowledge, locusts wouldn't eat cow's flesh as it's a herbivore. But when they check it on the microscope, they learn that this locust has tissue inside its stomach, which means they aren't herbivores. Colt then suspects that it must be Silogen, as he seemed to have worked there in the past as an entomologist. Moreover, it's revealed that Russ is none other than Vicky's father. Elsewhere, a family is enjoying a picnic in a peaceful park near the town. During their outing, their son, Kyle, plays with a toy glider and follows it to a cave where he sees a swarm of locusts. Scared, the boy runs towards his parents, but he's chased by the insects. He tells his parents that they need to run away, but it's too late as the locusts are already approaching. The mother puts Kyle in the car, but before she can help her husband, the couple is fatally attacked and killed. In desperation, Kyle tries to drive away, but he crashes into a tree and passes out. On the other hand, Colt confronts Russ at the Silogen facility and accuses him of the catastrophe caused by their experiment. However, the latter denies the accusations, claiming that it was an accident. He further asserts that all of these locusts will disappear in 2 days. After Colt departs, Russ goes to Gary and informs him about the situation. Gary then suggests that they destroy all the evidence of their experiment to save their research facility. In the next scene, State Trooper Anderson is on patrol when he spots the crashed car with a traumatized Kyle inside. He urgently breaks into the vehicle and brings the boy to his police car. As he's about to drive away, the locusts suddenly swarm his vehicle. However, the officer somehow manages to outrun them and drives the boy to the city hospital. Apart from all of this, the U.S. government hires an USDA agent, Greg Ballard, in order to address the locust issue in Idaho. Turns out that Greg is an expert who had successfully contained a locust infestation in Africa. Meanwhile, Colt arrives at the hospital to talk to his girlfriend. He discloses that her father is the one responsible for this locust infestation. Amidst their discussion, they get to know about the locust attack in the park. They then rush to the hospital morgue to check the bodies of Kyle's parents and learn that they share the same death as the cows. Following this, Vicky goes to check up on Kyle, while Colt heads outside to talk to Anderson. He finds that the officer's car is covered in locust and pulls out one of them for investigation. He then examines the insect at the hospital lab and uncovers a shocking revelation. The locust was a juvenile and they've been breeding. He quickly relays this information to Vicky, saying that it contradicts what her father told him earlier. Later that day, Greg arrives at Idaho, where he's received by Colt and Vicky. As they drive to their hospital lab, Colt suggests that they need to find the locust breeding grounds to stop them from reproducing. Everyone agrees, and they start mapping out the possible location of the locust's nest. After a while of research, they speculate that the nest is located in the cave near the place where Kyle had been attacked. Armed with this information, Colt, Vicky, Greg, and a group of exterminators set off to the cave. Once there, they find a swarm of locusts as well as the sticky larvae. Colt grabs some samples before allowing the group to spray the entire nest with pesticide. However, it seems that the locusts are completely immune to it. Greg then orders the team to burn it with a flamethrower, but this turns out to be a bad decision. The swarm gets agitated and launches their attack on the humans. In a desperate bid to save themselves, the team runs out of the cave, but the locusts follow them. They try to neutralize the threat with flamethrowers, but the swarm takes them down one after another. Colt, Vicky, and Greg are the only survivors at the end of the incident. Later, Greg receives a call from a government official who authorizes him to deploy UD-66, the most dangerous chemical weapon on the planet. Back at the hospital, a computer simulation predicts that in 96 hours, a sizable chunk of locust will cover Idaho. Due to this, Greg deduces that the only option they have is to spray the locusts with UD-66. Colt disagrees, claiming that the pesticide will have a massive effect on other biological lives for the next 10 years. However, Vicky also doesn't see any alternative, and she agrees to sign the order with Greg. By this time, the swarm of locusts reach an amusement park where they start eating people alive. This causes complete havoc in the area. As the news reaches the hospital, Colt, Vicky, and Greg work on figuring out a way to slow down the progress of the infestation. Greg then suggests that they put livestock in the middle of a field to lure them in and use UD-66. However, Colt keeps on warning them about the irreversible consequence of spraying the pesticide, forcing Greg to decide on using a lower dose of the military pesticide called UD-45. Afterwards, Greg, Vicky, and the military force prepare for their operation, while Colt continues to examine the previously taken sample of larvae in order to figure out why the locusts didn't attack him and Vicky during earlier confrontation. Not long after, he learns that the pesticides are not only ineffective on the locusts, but it also attracts them, making them even stronger. Realizing that his girlfriend and his team are in danger, Colt rushes towards the field where the military helicopter is about to release UD-45 on the locusts. Along the way, he calls his girlfriend and alerts her about the discovery. Vicky then immediately relays this information to Greg, But it's too late as the helicopter has already released the chemical. As a consequence, the locusts attack the helicopter and pierces through the body of the pilots, ultimately causing the helicopter to crash and explode. After this incident, the President of the United States dispatches the National Military Guards to Idaho. The residents are also evacuated to other states for safety. Amidst this, the locust swarm shows up, so the military launches an attack on them with deadly weapons. However, the insects prove to be much more powerful, and they overpowers the armed force in just a few minutes. Greg then decides to use UD-66 as their final approach, but Colt interjects with a crucial insight. The locusts refrained from attacking him and Vicky earlier because they both consume only organic food. He also believes that the locusts have an aversion to organic substances and a preference for chemical-laden ones. He asks Greg to trust him, assuring that he knows what to do. Seemingly convinced, Greg says he'll hold off the helicopters till he hears back from him. Following this, Colt heads to an airfield where he loads his organic pesticide in a dust cooper. Once done, he flies the plane and sprays the pesticide across the town, instantly killing the locusts. Believing that the threat is completely neutralized, Colt screams in joy, while Greg calls off the military helicopters. However, their assumption turns out to be wrong as two larger swarms appear over the city. Now that they have no more organic pesticides, they decide to head to the Silogen lab, intending to seek help from Russ. Minutes before they arrive there, Gary flees the place to avoid the responsibility for the damage caused by his experiment. But as he drives through the highway, a swarm of locusts pierces through his car and his body, resulting in his demise. Elsewhere, the group arrives at the lab and they ask Russ for a solution. The latter has realized his mistake, so he agrees to help them. He suggests that they should attract the locusts in the dome using pheromones and blow them up. Heeding to this plan, the military soldiers plant a bomb inside the dome, while Colt loads the dust copper with some pheromones and lures the swarm there. He flies the plane through the dome, and they shut the doors behind him, trapping the locusts inside. They then attempt to detonate the place, but the swarm interferes with the radio signal. Now, with time running out, Russ decides to do the unthinkable. He heads inside the dome and activates the bomb manually, as he feels he owes the world this much. This causes the entire facility to explode, finally killing all the locusts. Now that the danger is averted, Vicky runs to her boyfriend and they have an emotional reunion. In the final scene, we see one more truck with possibly hundreds of hungry locusts in the rear compartment. It's heading towards another crop dome somewhere outside Lafayette, Indiana.